A chance encounter turns deadly.
My first thought when I looked at him was, wow, who made this happen to you?
There's not a lot of good ways to die, but in this case, Victor Woods would not be at the top of the list.
One of the hardest cases of his career.
We're talking about a guy here who's willing to kill anybody to cover up his crime.
Lieutenant Kenda is about to face off against one of Colorado's most notorious serial killers.
Somebody like that, he doesn't need to be around anymore.
I have the ultimate challenge. There's no link to this guy. Who the hell are you?
My name is Lieutenant Joe Kenda. I've solved almost 400 homicides. Every case is unique, but there's one thing that never changes. A life has been taken. Their stories are now my stories.
In the early morning hours of January 26, 1988, 911 receives an emergency call. A fire has broken out in a large apartment building. The Colorado Springs Fire Department races to the scene. The smoke is concentrated in one unit. When they get the blaze under control, the firefighters find several items of clothing smoldering on the floor. They appear to have been deliberately set on fire. Firefighters search the apartment. At first, it's all clear. Then they go into the bedroom. A man is laying unconscious on the floor.
It appeared that he had succumbed to smoke inhalation, but firefighters, upon closer inspection, observed stab wounds in his chest.
Firefighters check for a pulse but find nothing. They immediately call the police.
He was found dead in his apartment due to multiple stab wounds and incise wounds. Some of those wounds entered the abdomen and some of which entered the back. It was clear that some of these injuries occurred after he was dead. When you have cases like that, you know that there's been a lot of extreme violence and a lot of anger delivered towards the person to the point at which they continue to injure that person after that person is clearly non-responsive and dead.
Papers and documents in the apartment indicate the victim is Victor Woods, a 31-year-old bike shop employee. The question is whether the fire and the homicide are related.
Concealment fires are very uncommon. It's not something that happens very frequently at all. Generally, if you have a concealment fire, it's because there is something that the suspect believes that is personal to them or is an identifying factor to them that they're trying to destroy, so that it stops that trail of leads for investigators to follow up to try and identify that suspect.
There's a lot of different things you can interpret out of that. One is that this was maybe a act where it was a spur of the moment type thing. I killed the person, now the person goes into panic mode and figures I've got to hide the body, I've got to hide the death. Fire is an easy result.
If the fire was started to destroy the body, police know this is no ordinary crime scene. Veteran Detective Lieutenant Joe Kenda takes over the investigation.
I walk into this apartment. There is a white male in his 30s, Victor Woods. He's been multiply stabbed. One of the wounds is an eviscerating wound. It's a violent, savage attack. My first thought when I looked at him was, wow, who made this happen to you? What did you do? What did you say that made somebody do this?
Looking around the apartment, Lieutenant Kenda is stunned to see that the smoke alarm has been disabled.
When I saw that smoke alarm gone, you get a feeling come over you like, oh my, oh my. He just didn't want to kill this guy. He didn't care who he killed. There were 220 or so people residing in that building. A lot of children, a lot of babies, a lot of adults. A building like that would burn to the ground in a matter of a few minutes. It tells me that this person doesn't care how many people they kill. In my mind, I thought he was exceptionally dangerous. He was willing to take that step, and I felt compelled to really get on this. We have to find this guy.
Kenda examines the victim. Woods has been stabbed numerous times in the chest.
There is blood, and there is blood spatter. It's not uncommon in multiple stab. You get what's called cast-off bleeding. The first blow produces blood. The second blow disperses it. You've got a large bladed knife swung with great force into the victim, and every time that blade was drawn and raised back for another strike, it throws blood off the blade onto the ceiling, onto the walls, onto the surrounding area. I've even seen multiple stab wounds where you can count the number of wounds by the number of streaks on the ceiling. You count the streaks and you add one, and that's pretty close to your number of wounds. I'm thinking he's been stabbed between 8 and 10 times.
And judging from the blood spatter, police are looking for a large blade. They don't have to search very far. A kitchen knife with an 8-inch blade sits on a TV tray next to a chair.
It is soaked in blood, both the hilt and the blade. Most likely our murder weapon. Where did that come from? Look around in the kitchen, there's a knife block. The big blade is missing. That's our source. Because it tells me one important thing. Weapon of opportunity. Whatever went wrong in here wasn't planned. Somebody didn't come here with a weapon. They obtained one while they were here and left it behind.
A knife being used in a homicide has a lot of other potential other than just harming the victim, especially if it's a case where they've stabbed multiple times and now the knife is bloody, their hand is bloody and it's slick. A hand can slip and actually end up receiving some injury as a result of running over the knife blade itself.
And a wound on the killer may be just as important as a wound on the victim.
I look in the sink and I see athletic socks. They're white. They are the same that are in the dressers in the victim's bedroom. They probably come from the apartment. They're blood-soaked. Those socks in the sink tell me our man's hurt. That blood belongs to the bad guy, not to our victim. He's cleaning up in that sink, or he's trying to.
The socks are sent to the lab for analysis. Police search the apartment for more evidence. They don't find any latent prints, but they also don't find any signs of forced entry. And that may be another clue.
The victim is familiar with the person that they allowed in. They're comfortable with them. They allowed them into their space so that it was easy access for the predator to enter in to commit that crime.
The crime scene provides Kenda with an initial profile of the suspect.
It's pretty apparent there's been overkill, and two things pop to mind. One is a crime of passion, and the other is rage. Either someone was very angry with this person, or somebody had a passionate relationship with that person. Something goes very wrong, and the relationship explodes in violence.
Police turn their attention from inside the apartment to outside. Maybe someone saw the killer leave the scene. Lieutenant Kenda talks with the caller who reported the fire. A 25-year-old pharmacist living in the unit above Victor Woods. She says that sometime around 2:15 a.m., she heard a loud scream.
She thinks it's a woman's scream, and she thinks the woman says, "Don't do that." She hears sounds of a struggle, like maybe a fight, but she doesn't hear anything else. She looks out the window to see if there's anything in the window, and she notices a car. She thought it was a Trans Am. She wasn't sure. Thought it was black, maybe had blue pinstripes on it. She'd never seen the car there before. She thought that was odd.
A second witness comes forward. She's a young athlete training at the nearby U.S. Olympic facility.
She got hurt during her training. She had a back injury, had difficulty with it, had trouble sleeping. She got up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to get a can of pop out of the vending machine. She sees a car leave, really high rate of speed. Car takes off out of the lot. Very loud mufflers, loud engine, but she doesn't see who's in it. She's not sure what color it is, and it leaves at the moment she sees the smoke.
At this point in the investigation, detectives' only lead is a car leaving the scene at approximately the same time as the murder. Lieutenant Kenda circles back to the victim.
The next step is the most important one. Where was Victor? Where did he encounter this person who decided to kill him? So our focus at that point is, give me a timeline on Victor. When was he last seen alive? And we now know when he's dead. Where was he in between? Because that's the key to finding whoever's with him in this apartment.
Investigators contact Victor's employer and co-workers at the bike shop. Some of them tell detectives that Victor had been having some run-ins with another employee.
Oh, really? I like run-ins. What kind of run-in? Name-calling and yelling and screaming back and forth. Seemed kind of odd to me that you would have that kind of heated argument among coworkers. So now we have someone else who's interesting. The car is interesting. This guy's promising. He doesn't like that guy, and he really doesn't like him. Well, we need a guy that really doesn't like him, because that's who killed him.
In January 1988, police find 31-year-old Victor Woods stabbed to death in his own apartment. The killer intended to destroy any clues by setting a fire, but it never caught.
He wants to prevent the discovery. He wants the police to believe this guy died in a fire. He didn't get it done.
Investigators run a background check on Victor and learn that he moved out to Colorado from Ohio.
Vic loved the outdoors. I mean, whether it was heading up to the mountains skiing in the winter or being on his bike, just even around town.
He would walk off the beaten path. A very unique individual. I guess I never knew anyone like him. He was, I think, made for Colorado.
After settling in, Victor Woods took a job working in a specialty bike shop.
It had been a couple years, and he had worked at a bicycle shop as a mechanic, and he had gotten recruited by someone down in Colorado Springs. They're opening a new shop, and that he thought there might be potential for advancement in the new company.
He's very good at building and working on and selling bicycles. He's the right guy in the right place at the right time. The guy hires him. So Victor's doing fine. He's getting along.
The news of Victor's murder stuns his family and friends.
I was basically devastated. I just could not believe it.
The only information I had was none. I did not know who he might have been hanging with or what was going on there. Vic, had no enemies. He just wasn't that kind of guy.
We did talk to the local ex-girlfriend. Nothing unusual, nothing out of the ordinary. They just decided to break up, but normal relationship, normal guy. No issues with him as far as she knew. Victor's family provides a picture of a pleasant man who is in the bicycle business. There is no history in Victor's background that would suggest he has ever been involved in any of the high-risk behaviors that often wind up in people getting killed.
When investigators talk to Victor's co-workers, however, they discover that he may have made an enemy.
Well, Victor and this guy, they don't get along. What does that mean? Explain that more to me. They say that Victor and this particular guy have often argued, heated arguments over the method by which a bike was to be repaired, and it was always a bickering contest that got several times out of control. And you think, well, is that a reason to kill for? Well, some people don't need a reason, but that's not a reason. I thought there had to be something else to that. Why so heated? Why so escalating? Why so angry? If all it is about work, there's got to be something else there.
The question is, what is that something? Police bring the coworker in for questioning.
He denies everything, of course. You know, he's angry, he feels trapped, he's frightened, he's all the right things. Nothing about him is unusual. Takes a while, but he finally says, well, it's more than about the repairs. Okay, because now I want you to tell me a story I'll believe. Don't tell me about fighting with this guy because you don't like his technique, because that's bull. Tell me what you feel. Why are you so pissed at this guy? And he finally tells me the truth, or something at least I believe. This guy was the top dog in his shop until Victor showed up. Now the guy's afraid he's going to lose his job, because Victor is really good at what he does. And he's obviously much better than this guy. So he reacts out of self-defense to yell at Victor and try to minimize his skills and so on. And he's just trying to protect himself. Okay, I can believe that story. This makes sense to me. But still, we're going to play the game. We use the polygraph tool. You take a polygraph about this, about killing Victor? Of course.
During the polygraph, the suspect denies being involved in the death of Victor Woods. But the test results tell a different story.
He takes the polygraph. He doesn't do well on the polygraph. That doesn't matter to me. The outcome of a polygraph doesn't make a difference to me unless there's an admission. My only purpose in using it is to get you to tell me, not the machine. You tell me.
Kenda wants a confession, but instead gets an alibi for the night of the murder.
It turns out he belongs to a pool league. They stay there all night, shoot pool in the league. Nobody leaves. They go to breakfast at an all-night restaurant afterwards. They're not leave the restaurant until 4 o'clock in the morning. He's with them. He's not anything to do with this killing. So now we're back to square one.
Square one is the dead body of Victor Woods in a fast car leaving his apartment complex at 2 a.m. Investigators set their sights on Victor's last known whereabouts.
He likes to go to the Yukon Tavern. He likes to go there because it's kind of a hot place for people in their 30s, which this guy is. And it's close to where he lives. It's about 1.5 miles up the street from where he resides. They thought he went there that night, the night before he's discovered. He worked that day, and he got off in the afternoon, and he told his friends he was going to go to the Yukon Tavern for happy hour. So this is good, and we know where he worked. We know he worked that day. We know, or we think we know, he went to the Yukon Tavern. At least that's what he told his friends. We find out Victor Woods is there routinely, and he was there that night. That he is a regular, they know him, everybody in there knows him. They describe him as a nice guy. They also say he can get a little obnoxious when he gets drunk. He stays there all night and he gets loaded. But he doesn't go home and he won't leave. Keeps trying to drink. They finally cut him off. He gets mad about that. He wants more to drink. Finally, the place is starting to drift out because it's closing time.
A bartender and one of the waitresses both remember a guy sitting at the bar with Victor. A white male in his 30s.
The cocktail waitress says he's really good looking, looks like a movie star. She was struck by him. She was attracted to him. Handsome, handsome guy. Looks to be in excellent shape, has a tan.
The witnesses recall seeing the two men leaving the bar together at about 1:30 a.m.
The bartender says that after they left, she heard a car start. She described it as a muscle car, and she said that car had some throat. Oh, now we're back from the car at the apartments to maybe something promising.
It's frustrating to get information that you know is linking two different crimes and would be leading you towards a suspect. However, it seems that there's really nowhere to go with it. How do you identify a vehicle that people have said they heard but you can't really go anywhere with it until you've got that extra factor that's going to point to a specific person, specific car, specific location.
Without a license plate or an identifiable driver, the car is just a tease. Who was behind the wheel the night Victor was killed?
This maniac is on the loose. He's already killed once. And my gut is telling me he likes it, and he's going to kill again.
Several days after the murder of Victor Woods, the police have very few leads in their investigation.
It was a mystery. It was like, why would somebody do that to somebody and then set a fire? You're obviously putting a lot of other people in danger as well, people who lived in that apartment complex. So it kind of takes on a whole different meaning than just a basic fire.
The Colorado Bureau of Investigation examines the bloody socks found in the kitchen. As Kenda suspected, tests show that the blood was not the victim's, but instead probably belonged to the suspect. But the test results don't point to anyone specific.
Detectives have very little to go on. They have the vague description of a car, a vague description of a guy that matches half the men in the United States, 35 and under.
I got zipped. So we're going to try off-the-wall stuff, then maybe get lucky. We got one witness that says this is a jacked-up, customized car. Is she right? I don't know. In the absence of anything else, let's go with that. So I have my guys start contacting custom car clubs, auto body shops, muffler shops, places that commonly do work on cars like that and who commonly know gearheads who have cars like that.
You want to make sure everybody knows that this vehicle, this suspect, this description fits a possible crime scene. You want to get that information out to as many people as possible in hopes that we come up with a lead.
Investigators canvass car shops across Colorado Springs, but to no avail.
We get nowhere. Nobody can put that kind of a car with that kind of a guy. So that straw that we're trying to grab, we can't reach it. We are doing a lot of work with no result. So we need to expand our horizons. What if he belongs to a car club somewhere else? So we expand our search.
Working the theory that their suspect may have connections outside of Colorado Springs, investigators send what they know about the case to the FBI.
There's a system put in place by the FBI called the VICAP system. It stands for Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, a method by which every police department in the country can enter information about unsolved cases. So if you have a case that's unsolved, it may compare to one in some other state or some other city. We entered the Victor Woods case into that system, and we got nowhere with that either. At this point in this investigation, we've done everything we can humanly think of to do, and we have learned exactly nothing. We haven't found our guy. We don't have a clue on who he is or where he is. And we've got this mountain of paper that is absolutely, at this point, meaningless.
When you have nothing to go on, those to me are the saddest, number one, because you've got nothing that you can work on. And they're the most frustrating because you just absolutely have nowhere you can go. You have thought of just about everything you can think of. You've run it by each other. You've talked to other detectives. You've discussed where we need to go, and you just aren't going anywhere.
Victor's friends begin to wonder if he had simply bumped into the wrong guy at the wrong place at the wrong tavern.
I would think if Victor was drinking and if he was unable to make it home, maybe he wouldn't have used the caution that he should have.
The connection to the bar reminds Kenda of something one of the waitresses told him at the beginning of the investigation.
When we're in the bar and we're talking to all these bar folks, we're talking to the waitress. The waitress is cute, young, dressed appropriately for a waitress. She remembers approaching this guy, our Mr. X, our movie star, and he didn't react to her at all. Didn't even speak to her, just looked at her. Her feeling, Well, he has to be homosexual. Why? Because he didn't respond to you?
The suggestion, however, forces investigators down another blind alley.
We talked to everybody Victor's ever known in his life, his family, his coworkers. We find no evidence, none, of any kind, of Victor Woods being homosexual in any way.
Once again, a strong lead goes nowhere.
I had a sign in my office. It says, "Mysteries make my head hurt." And they do. In this particular case, now I have the ultimate challenge. There's no link. There is no link to this guy. Who the hell is he? And how did he come into Victor Woods' life? It's like you sit there and just stare at the wall like, what did I forget? There's still no key here. Where is the key? And you look at your blank wall and you look at it and you say, who are you? Where are you? Where is your car that everybody says you have? What'd you do with the car? Who are you, man? Who are you?
The answer to these questions lies 40 miles south of Colorado Springs. On February 3rd, 1988, 8 days after the murder of Victor Woods, a souped-up Camaro pulls into the parking lot of a small hotel in Pueblo, Colorado. A man armed with a .38 caliber pistol gets out of the car and walks into the lobby.
He pointed a weapon at the clerk and he told the clerk that this is a robbery. About that time, a security guard who was making his rounds around the outside of the hotel entered the lobby. And then the man with the weapon pointed it at the security guard. And he said, "I know you are armed. Don't go for your weapon." And then he approached the security guard, disarmed the security guard, and then shot the security guard right in the face. The security guard fell to the floor, but he did survive, and he was able to hear what happened next. He told us that he heard the suspect go back toward the lobby. He heard a second gunshot, which would have been the shot that killed the clerk laying on the floor. And then he heard the suspect leave the hotel, and he heard a loud vehicle, like a loud muscle car, pull out of the parking lot of the hotel.
The cold-blooded killing shocks the small community.
It was the kind of thing where, wow, this poor person was just at work doing his job, and somebody comes in for really no reason other than, maybe a small robbery that's not going to net a lot of money, and shoots this young man just in cold blood.
Lieutenant Kenda doesn't know it yet, but Victor Woods was just the beginning. Kenda is now hunting a serial killer, and the clock is ticking. When Victor Woods is found murdered, the only clues to the killer's identity are that he's a white male in his early 30s and that he drives a loud muscle car. So when investigators fail to turn up any new leads, the trail goes cold. But a week later, a second man turns up dead. This time, however, police have a solid lead. According to the hotel workers, this same suspect robbed the same hotel several weeks earlier.
There was a robbery in January of 1988 in which a female clerk was held up. She had a pretty good description of the person who robbed her.
The clerk provides a description eerily similar to the bartenders at the Yukon Tavern. A good-looking white male in his early 30s. This time, news reports of the shooting result in a tip to the police hotline.
The caller who called in the tip to Crime Stoppers stated that they had overheard Ronald Lee White making comments about having hit the hotel the first time and was going to do it again. The caller then assumed that the second robbery that resulted in the murder was the work of Ronald White.
A background check reveals that Ronald Lee White has a long and extensive criminal record. It also shows that he's been living in an apartment in Colorado Springs. Pueblo investigators immediately contact the Colorado Springs PD SWAT team. However, notification of the impending arrest doesn't reach Lieutenant Kenda.
We pulled a photograph of Ronald Lee White, and we used that in the photo arrays that we showed to the victims. Once we had him identified as the killer, we worked with the Colorado Springs Police Department, their technical enforcement unit set up on Ronald White's residence.
White has no idea the cops are outside. As he leaves his apartment, police make the arrest. White is brought to the station. He is one of the most chilling suspects local police officers have ever seen.
When you look at a picture of Ronald Lee White, you see a blank stare in his eyes. I've seen that stare before in people who have committed very vicious crimes. When you look in a face like that, you know that you're looking at a very dangerous, very heartless, uncaring individual.
He's the type of person that is really there's no more rehabilitation involved with Ronald White. There's only taking him off the streets and making sure he can't hurt other people.
On the day after White's arrest in Pueblo, a startling report arrives at the Colorado Springs Police Department.
I run across this Rimmon bulletin, Rocky Mountain Information Network, describing the arrest of one Ronald Lee White, described as a white male, brown hair, hazel eyes. He's born in 1955, makes him in his early 30s. He has a Chevy Camaro blue with light blue pinstripes. He's under arrest for 2 counts of murder. This absolutely piques my interest. Instantly, look what we have here. Maybe we have our guy. But I'm trying to hold back my excitement because I've been disappointed in this case 5,000 times. But this guy fits very nicely, and he is the right look, and he is the right car, and he's violent. So I like it, but I'm just a little bit afraid of liking it too much. But we gotta look into this.
While investigators believe White is the right suspect in the hotel shooting, can they connect him to Victor Woods?
We take his picture out to the waitress at the bar. We get a looks like ID. Not a positive ID. That looks like the guy. Great. Bartender the same. Looks like the guy. There's no positive ID. We can't put him anyplace. Do I have anything I can take to court? No, I don't. The car is the closest link we have, but we have a witness that thinks it's a Trans Am. His car's a Camaro. The only thing I have is reasonable suspicion. He might be our killer. That's not enough to make the charges stick, but it is enough to warrant a conversation. I need to talk to this guy. I need to get Ronald Lee White to tell me he killed Victor Woods. I need that confession.
White is the type of case that you want to do everything you can, from the district attorney's office to the police department, through the multiple jurisdictions, to make sure that we arrest as soon as possible so that he doesn't kill again and that we convict.
The evidence points towards Ronald Lee White as the primary suspect in the Victor Woods case. But is it enough? Without any guarantees, the veteran detective decides to face off with a possible serial killer in an effort to make him confess.
In many ways, it's a game of poker for all the money. Except we're playing with his life.
On February 8th, 1988, 13 days after the murder of Victor Woods, a new suspect emerges, Ronald Lee White. He's already under arrest for murder in Pueblo, Colorado. But did he kill Victor as well?
I have reasonable suspicion. Do I have anything else? Nope. I don't even have enough to arrest him. But I might be able to play him. I might be able to get him to tell me. So our plan is formulated. We're going to request the Pueblo PD to bring him to the Springs. I want him a little off balance. I want him to wonder why he's being driven somewhere else. Make him think about it. The drive up from Pueblo takes 45 minutes to an hour. Ample time for Ronald Lee White to wonder what is happening. If he is who I think he is, his personality is such that if he thinks you already know, he will tell you what he's done. If he doesn't think you know, he won't tell you anything.
Kenda has his detectives talk to him first, but White just sits there, apparently unfazed by the situation.
He just finds this all to be annoying. You get anybody else in an interrogation room that's under arrest for murder already, and you're about to tag him for another one, he's shaking so bad he can't sit still. That's what makes him a scary dude. He is not the boy next door. He might look like the boy next door, but he isn't. When I walk in, White is asleep. Even though he's in a major jam, he's bored. That's what kind of person White is. But I walk in, I'm a new face. There's a no smoking sign on the wall of the interrogation room, and I see his eyes go to it. Would you like a cigarette, Ron? Well, there's this sign. Yeah, I know, but I kind of run this place, so I can kind of do what I want to. So I gave him a cigarette. He's cuffed in front of him. I gave him a lighter because I wanted to get a better look at his hand without him thinking I'm looking at it. It's been treated now, but still it's going to be consistent with a hand slipping off a handle onto a blade. So he lights his cigarette. We talk for a minute. I said, you know why you're here, Ron? I don't know, is the response. Oh, let me explain. People see things, Ron. People see you. Sometimes you don't see them, or you don't pay attention. Like the waitress in the bar who identifies you positively that you're the guy that's in the bar. And of course, there's that bartender who positively identified you as talking to Victor. Two other women at the apartment complex. They see your car. They see smoke. That's the night you killed Victor Woods. You see what I mean? People notice things.
Kenda now has Ronald Lee White's full attention.
He's just looking at me, not responding. Not saying anything, just looking at me. You killed him, didn't you? He came on to me, man. He came on to me. I said, Ronnie, try again. He looked at me and smiled and said, well, maybe he just pissed me off. I killed him, like you said. I cut my hand in that knife. That hurt too.
White confesses to killing Woods, but never explains what really happened that fateful night. Kenda believes that the evening started off as nothing more than two guys talking to each other in a bar.
The thing that's so spooky about that whole affair, it's a chance encounter. I don't think there was anything more to it than that. I think that the likelihood is that Victor is drunk. Victor wants a ride home because he's afraid to drive. And he asked the wrong guy for it. And the likelihood is because Vic is sociable and he's been drinking. Come on, let's have another drink. All right, he goes in for whatever reason.
And when he goes inside, something goes very wrong.
Now, did Victor go into his saying the wrong thing, which he did when he drinks? What if he said something to Ron and made him mad? And Ron went off and grabbed a knife and hacked Victor to pieces with it in a moment of rage, because that's what Ron White is. Ron's a sociopath. And I think that's all there was to it. It was a moment in time for Ron White, and it ended Victor Wood's life.
Kenda has his man, but just how many other victims are out there?
We're going to charge you with this murder, Ron, another one. You're making a list. Who else have you killed? He didn't answer me, but he looked at me, and he smirked at me.
Ronald Lee White soon admits to shooting the hotel clerk in Pueblo, as well as his old roommate 3 years before.
White tells the investigators that he is an avid Star Trek fan. He prefers the old programs. He has a roommate, and the roommate wants to watch something else, just as he's prepared to watch his Star Trek program. So Ronald White shoots his roommate in the face with his .44 Magnum revolver because he was going to change that channel, and that's just not going to work.
They were going to be able to obtain the death penalty in Pueblo, and they wondered if we would incorporate our case with theirs in order to better ascertain that result. And so that's what we did on that case.
White eventually pleads guilty to the murders of Victor Woods, the hotel clerk, and White's roommate. He receives a life sentence without the possibility of parole. During his sentencing, White tells the judge that he had a hand in as many as 15 other murders.
We have the general idea of what a serial murderer might look like or whatever, and you look at Ronald Lee White and you think, here's somebody who I would walk past in the mall and never even think that he's somebody who could be so cold-blooded, who could have, maybe a half an hour before killed somebody and then be just walking down the street the next minute.
I thought that this guy was sick and that he should be put away forever. He took something that couldn't be given back. He had no regard for human life, and he would obviously do it again if need be.
Vic was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. This guy was going to probably kill somebody that night anyway, and it just so happened that they crossed paths.
Closure never happens for a victim's family. It just doesn't. I think many people can quietly take the pain. Some people cannot. I think the grief reaction varies widely. Some people can deal with it, and some never do. I don't think anybody ever really does. There's something profoundly wrong about your child dying before you do. That's not the way of things. It's not supposed to be that way. And I don't think you recover from that. I don't.
When Vic was killed, it confused me and enraged me, and it was just one of those lessons in life that life just isn't fair. It isn't right. And things can happen at a moment's notice.
What could Victor Woods have done any differently? Nothing. He's just looking for a ride home. He just finds exactly the wrong guy on planet Earth to provide that ride. Things happen. People die sometimes as a result.
The call came in just after dawn, the kind of hour when the world hasn't decided what mood it's in yet, and the city's coffee hasn't fully kicked the fog out of people's eyes. Jonah Cade had been staring at a stack of paperwork so tall it qualified as a small mountain range when the dispatcher's voice slid into his ear like a cold hand. Apartment building, reported fire, units responding, possible victim inside. Cade stood up on instinct, which is what your body does when your mind is too tired to negotiate. Mara Vance looked up from her desk, hair still doing that brave, defiant thing it did when sleep was only a rumor. "Let me guess," she said. "Someone set their kitchen on fire because they thought aluminum foil was optional." "Worse," Cade replied, already grabbing his coat. "It's not the kitchen." Mara's expression sharpened. She was out the door before he finished the sentence, because for all the jokes, there was one rule they both lived by. When the call has that tone, you move. The apartment complex sat like a concrete hive on the edge of town. A big building with too many windows and the faint smell of old carpet that never truly leaves places where hundreds of lives overlap. Fire trucks were already there, red lights painting the walls in restless flashes. Residents clustered outside in coats and slippers, holding kids, holding phones, holding each other's fear like it might slip away if they loosen their grip. A fire captain met Cade at the entrance, soot smudged across his cheek in a way that looked like the building had tried to keep him as a souvenir. "Units contained," he said. "Smoke concentrated in one apartment. We found clothing smoldering on the floor. Doesn't look accidental." Cade heard the phrasing, the careful choice of words. Smoldering clothing is what you say when you don't want to say set on purpose until you're sure. "Anyone hurt?" Cade asked. The captain's jaw tightened. One male in the bedroom. Not breathing. Mara exhaled softly, not dramatic, just the tiny sound of a person acknowledging that the day had crossed a line. They went in with the fire captain and a uniformed officer holding the scene. The hallway smelled of damp smoke and panic that had nowhere to go. Inside the unit, the air still felt heavy, as if it remembered what had carried. The living room had scorch marks near a small pile of fabric on the floor. Clothes that had been deliberately pushed into a corner like someone was trying to keep the fire small and useful, not loud and hungry. Cade moved slowly, eyes scanning, mind shifting into that quiet, meticulous mode. "Concealment fire," he murmured. Mara looked around. "If you want to conceal something, you usually don't do it in a building full of families," she said. "That's not concealment. That's reckless." Cade's gaze went up to the smoke alarm. The cover was open. The battery was missing. He felt that familiar chill, the one that comes when you realize this wasn't just about one person. "They didn't just want to hurt someone," he said quietly. "They didn't care who else got hurt." Mara's voice softened. "Okay, so we're not dealing with someone who makes careful moral distinctions." "Not my favorite kind of person," Cade replied, which was as close as he got to understatement. In the bedroom, the victim lay on the floor, a man in his early 30s. The scene was brutal without needing the ugly details. There were signs of a violent struggle, signs of repeated strikes, the kind of anger that doesn't stop when it should. Cade didn't linger on it. He never did. He believed a victim deserved more than becoming an object for someone else's curiosity. The fire captain stepped back as Cade crouched at the threshold. "Names in his paperwork," the captain said. "Victor Woods, bike shop employee." Cade absorbed the name like a weight. Another person, another story now forced into the department's hands. He scanned the room, the furniture, the small signs of a life interrupted. A TV tray near a chair, a kitchen knife resting there, placed almost casually, as if whoever left it behind had either panicked or felt so untouchable they didn't care. Cade's eyes moved to the kitchen sink. White athletic socks lay inside, soaked through. Mara saw it too. "That's not laundry," she said. "No," Cade agreed. "That's cleanup." He didn't have to say more. The implication sat between them. Whoever did this likely injured themselves, and they tried to deal with it fast. People imagine criminals as careful masterminds. In reality, a lot of cases turn on the simplest human problem in the world: blood on your hands and nowhere to put it. Crime scene techs worked the apartment, careful and quiet. No forced entry. No useful prints. The place offered the same frustrating message Cade had heard 100 times. The victim probably opened the door. Familiarity, trust, routine. Those ordinary things that make you feel safe are also the easiest way danger walks right into your house. Outside, Cade spoke with 2 witnesses. One was a pharmacist who lived upstairs, eyes wide, voice tight. She described waking to a loud scream around 2:15 a.m., a woman's voice shouting something like, "Don't do that," then the sounds of a struggle, then silence. She looked out her window and saw a car she didn't recognize in the lot, a dark, sporty-looking vehicle with loud exhaust, gone soon after. The second witness was a young athlete who'd gotten up in the night because pain had stolen her sleep. She heard a car leaving fast, engine roaring, loud enough that it felt like an announcement. She didn't see a plate. She didn't see a face. She saw speed and heard noise, and that was all. Back at the car, Mara tossed her notebook onto the dashboard and stared through the windshield like she could bully the universe into cooperation. "We have a dead man, a deliberate fire attempt, a disabled alarm, no forced entry, and a car that half the city apparently heard but nobody can name," she said. Cade nodded. "So Tuesday." Mara snorted. "It's Wednesday." "Feels like Tuesday," Cade replied. and Mara laughed despite herself, because tired humor is the kind that comes out whether you approve of it or not. They did what homicide detectives always do when evidence won't give you a clear suspect. They build a timeline. Where was Victor? Who saw him? What did he do in the hours before his life ended? Victor's co-workers at the bike shop described him as talented, outdoorsy, a guy who came to Colorado to breathe the mountains and the promise of a new start. No known enemies, no obvious high-risk behavior, no dramatic history that would make your job easy. Which was always the cruelest kind of case, when the victim looks like someone who should have been protected by being ordinary. Then someone mentioned a co-worker Victor had been clashing with. The arguments sounded too heated, too personal, too sharp for a disagreement about bike repairs. Cade brought the co-worker in, watched him deny, watched him sweat, watched him eventually admit he'd felt threatened by Victor's skill, by the fear of being replaced. Cade understood that emotion. Insecurity can make people mean. It can make them loud, but it doesn't always make them violent. They ran the polygraph for leverage, not because the machine mattered, but because people's reactions to the machine mattered. The co-worker's nerves spiked. Then he produced an alibi that checked out, a pool league, witnesses, time stamps, the kind of boring consistency that makes detectives both relieved and annoyed. Mara tossed the file back on the desk. So our angry co-worker is just angry, she said. Great. I love it when the obvious suspect is innocent. It really helps my personal growth. Cade didn't smile, but his eyes softened. You're growing, he said, just sideways. Their focus shifted to the Yukon Tavern, a neighborhood bar Victor liked, a place where regulars blur into the furniture and nobody's life seems dangerous until it is. Staff remembered Victor being there the night before, drinking too much, refusing to leave, becoming that version of himself that alcohol sometimes calls up. Louder, more social, more careless. Near closing time, a bartender and a cocktail waitress recalled Victor sitting with a man they didn't recognize, a good-looking guy in his early 30s, polished in a way that made people notice. The waitress described him like someone had hired him to stand there and look impressive. The bartender remembered the two men leaving together around 1:30 a.m., then hearing a muscle car start up, deep engine note, loud exhaust, the kind of car that announces its presence like it pays rent. Cade filed that away. A handsome stranger, a loud car, Victor leaving with him. A simple chain. The problem was the same as always. Simple chains are hard to grab when you don't have a name. They canvassed auto shops, custom muffler places, car clubs, anyone who might know a vehicle described as loud, which is the investigative equivalent of asking the ocean if it has any water. They fed what they had into national systems, hoping another department had seen the same pattern. They waited for the kind of luck that never arrives on time. Days passed. The case turned into paper. The paper turned into a weight. Cade stared at his board late at night. The notes like small accusations. Who is he? Where did he go? Why Victor? Mara brought him a coffee and slid it across the desk. If you stare at the wall long enough, she said, it won't confess. Cade took the cup. It might, he replied. Walls have secrets. Mara rolled her eyes. That's because you talk to them like they're suspects. Cade didn't deny it. Then, 8 days after Victor's murder, a second incident hit. This time in a small hotel down in Pueblo. A man with a loud Camaro-style car came in, demanded money, and escalated in a way that left 2 people hurt, one of them fatally. The details were harsh, but the pattern was clear: boldness, indifference, the willingness to do catastrophic harm for small gain. The hotel's security guard survived and described the vehicle leaving. Loud, fast, unmistakable in its noise. When the report hit Cade's desk, it didn't feel like relief. It felt like dread with a shape. Same type of car, Mara said, reading over his shoulder. Same kind of suspect description. Cade's jaw tightened. And if it's the same guy, he murmured, Victor wasn't a target. Victor was timing. Mara went quiet. That possibility always hit hard. The idea that someone could die simply because they crossed paths with the wrong person at the wrong hour. A tip came in through a hotline about a man named Ronald White bragging in the way some people brag. Casual, careless, convinced the world is full of listeners who don't matter. Pueblo police moved quickly. They arrested him with the kind of coordinated urgency that only happens when multiple agencies decide a person cannot be allowed another day of freedom. Cade found the bulletin in a stack of reports like a message that had fought its way to the surface. Ronald Lee White, early 30s, matching description, associated with a loud Chevy Camaro with distinctive striping, under arrest for murder in Pueblo. Cade felt something dangerous rise in him. Hope. He hated hope in investigations. Hope makes you sloppy. Hope makes you fall in love with your theory. And theories don't convict people. Evidence does. Still, he couldn't ignore the fit. He brought photos to the Yukon Tavern staff. They said, "Looks like him." Not a confident identification. Not the kind you could walk into court with and feel proud. But enough for Cade to do what he did best. Talk to the person and see if the truth could be coaxed out by pressure and psychology. He asked Pueblo to bring White up to Colorado Springs. Not for convenience. Cade never believed criminals deserve convenience, but for strategy. A change of place can shake a person loose. The drive gives them time to wonder. Wonder turns into anxiety. Anxiety can turn into mistakes. White arrived looking bored, which is what unnerved Cade the most. Most people in custody are tense. White looked like a man forced to attend a meeting he didn't schedule. He sat in the interview room with that blank calm that makes you realize you're not dealing with ordinary fear. When Cade walked in, White's eyes lifted. He noted the no smoking sign with the kind of petty attention that suggested he wanted control of something. Anything. Cade glanced at the sign, then at White. "You want a cigarette?" he asked, voice casual. White's eyebrows rose. "There's a sign." Cade shrugged. "I run this place." Mara, watching through the glass, later said Cade's tone had been so dry it could have preserved fruit. Cade handed White a cigarette and a lighter, not because he was being kind, but because he wanted to see White's hands without making a show of it. A lot of violent encounters leave a mark on the person who caused them. A cut, a scrape, something small that tells a bigger story. White lit up. Cade saw what he needed to see. Evidence of an injury that fit the apartment scene, the bloody socks in the sink, the frantic cleanup. Cade leaned back and spoke in the calm rhythm he reserved for people who thought they were untouchable. "People notice things," he said. "You don't always notice them noticing. Bartenders, waitresses, neighbors, someone looking out a window at the wrong time. They saw you. They heard your car. They saw smoke. It adds up." White stared at him, expression still flat, but his attention sharpened. The blankness cracked just enough for Cade to step through. Cade didn't describe the crime in detail. He didn't need to. He didn't offer theatrics, because men like White don't respond to theater. They respond to inevitability. "You were there," Cade said, simply. White's mouth twitched, almost a smile, almost a sneer. Then the words came out, not as a full story, but as a confession wrapped in irritation. He admitted being at Victor's apartment. He admitted the encounter had started in the bar. Nothing special. Two men talking, one needing a ride, the other agreeing because the night was young and his ego was hungry. He admitted something went wrong inside, something that turned his mood from casual to violent fast. Cade listened, face still, heart heavy, because hearing it never gets easier. It doesn't matter how many cases you've worked. A confession is not a victory. It's a receipt for tragedy. Mara stepped into the room at the end, notebook in hand, eyes sharp. White looked at her like she was an inconvenience. Mara smiled politely. "Just so you know," she said, "I've met vending machines with warmer personalities." White didn't react. Mara continued anyway, because she was Mara, and I've met cats that cooperate more. Cade gave her a look that said not now, and she subsided, but he could feel her frustration. White's calm wasn't bravery. It was emptiness. And emptiness is hard to fight. White later admitted to other serious crimes. He made comments about more victims, more harm, as if life were a scorecard and he wanted credit. Cade knew that urge too, the way some offenders use confession as performance. It wasn't remorse. It was vanity. The legal system did what it does. Negotiations consolidated cases, life sentences, formal language trying to wrap itself around something it can't fully contain. Victor Woods' family got answers, but answers are not the same as healing. Cade had learned that closure is a word people say when they don't know what else to offer. On the day the paperwork finally settled, Cade sat alone in his office with the file closed and his coffee cooling into something bitter. Mara walked in, dropped a fresh stack of forms on his desk, and sighed like she'd just seen the future. "You know what I hate?" she said. Cade didn't look up. "Only one thing." Mara ignored him. "That Victor did everything right," she said. "He went out. He had a drink. He asked for a ride. Normal stuff. And it still ended wrong." Cade stared at the closed file. "Sometimes the difference between safe and not safe," he said quietly, "is just a person who says yes." Mara nodded. "That's the worst lesson." Cade leaned back, eyes tired. "The only lesson we can control," he said, "is what we do next." Mara picked up the top form, read it, and groaned. "Next, apparently, we do 12 pages about evidence tags." Cade's mouth twitched. "Justice," he said, deadpan, "is 10% truth and 90% paperwork." Mara pointed at him. "Put that on a poster." Cade looked up, finally letting the smallest hint of a smile through. "Don't." Mara grinned anyway, because she was already imagining it. A cartoon dog in sunglasses, smirking under the caption, "Don't ask me, I'm just the dog," and beneath it, in smaller print, "Justice is mostly forms." Outside the window, the city kept moving, careless and alive. Somewhere, a bartender wiped down a counter. Somewhere, a cyclist pedaled uphill, lungs burning in clean mountain air. Somewhere, a mother stared at a phone that would never ring with the voice she wanted. Cade stood, turned off the office light, and let the darkness settle. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt tired, but he also felt something steady under the fatigue. The stubborn belief that even when life is unfair, even when the night brings chance encounters that shouldn't matter but do, the truth is still worth dragging into the light, carefully, respectfully, and without letting anyone turn it into a party trick. Then his phone buzzed again, because the city had no interest in letting him become philosophical in peace. Mara's voice came from the doorway. "Don't answer it," she said. "If we ignore it, maybe it goes away." Cade reached for the receiver anyway. "It never goes away," he replied. Mara sighed. "Fine," she said, grabbing her coat. "Let's go ruin another criminal's day with our personalities and our forms." Cade opened the door, stepped back into the fluorescent hum of the precinct, and followed the next call into the next story. The confession didn't land like a victory. It landed like a heavy coat someone draped over Jonah Cade's shoulders and then walked away, leaving him to carry it through the rest of the day. Ronald White sat in the interview room with that blank, mildly irritated expression that made Cade's instincts itch. Most people, when the walls finally close in, do something obvious, plead, bargain, panic, or perform regret like it's a stage monologue. White did none of it. He looked like a man stuck in traffic, offended by the delay, certain the universe should have scheduled this around him. Cade kept it simple. He didn't rehearse the scene for White. He didn't dress the facts in drama. He didn't describe anything in a way that turned it into spectacle. He just stayed in the lane that mattered. Time, place, cause, responsibility. "You were with Victor that night," Cade said. White stared at him as if Cade had asked him to solve a math problem. Then his mouth moved, and the words came out with the casualness of someone talking about a parking ticket. He confirmed he'd met Victor at the bar. He confirmed he'd gone back to the apartment. He confirmed an argument and a sudden escalation. He also offered a version of events that tried to shift blame onto the victim, like a reflex, like an old habit. Cade let it happen for a few seconds, then leaned forward slightly, voice calm and flat. "That story isn't going to help you," he said. "It's not going to help the family. It's not going to help the court. And it's not going to change what you did." White's eyes narrowed. Not angry, exactly. More like he'd realized Cade wasn't going to participate in his preferred kind of conversation, one where he gets to be the main character. Mara Vance watched from the observation window with her arms crossed, her face a controlled mask that still managed to communicate a whole paragraph of opinion. When she stepped into the room, she did it the way Mara always did, like the room belonged to her, even if the fluorescent lights disagreed. White glanced at her unimpressed. Mara sat, opened her notebook, and looked up sweetly. "Just to set expectations," she said, "we're going to ask questions. You're going to answer them. If you choose not to, the paperwork gets longer, and none of us want that. White didn't speak. Mara's pen hovered. Also, she added, if you think silence makes you look mysterious, it doesn't. It makes you look like a guy waiting for someone else to pick the movie. Cade gave her a look that said, careful. Mara nodded in the smallest way that said, I am being careful. I'm just also being me. Cade guided the interview back to what mattered. He secured a clear admission. He clarified timeline. He documented the injury, why to try to hide. He asked about the attempt to obscure what had happened afterward, because that part wasn't just about the victim. It was about the building, the families, the children, the risk to every person asleep behind those walls. When Cade finally stood, he didn't feel relief. He felt the grim stability of a door closing. Not gently, not neatly, but firmly enough that it wouldn't swing open again. In the hallway outside, Mara let out a long breath. I hate that kind of calm, she said. Cade nodded once. It's not calm, he replied. It's vacancy. Mara frowned. That's worse. It is, Cade agreed. They weren't done. Confessing to one crime often meant there were more, or at least more questions, and Cade had learned the hard way that a person like White didn't just appear fully formed in one night and then retire. There was always a history, a pattern, a trail of smaller alarms people had ignored because it was easier to call them odd than dangerous. A Pueblo detective arrived mid-morning with a thick folder and the face of a man who'd been living on adrenaline and bad coffee for too long. He shook Cade's hand, then Mara's, then dropped into the chair like gravity had finally gotten its wish. We're getting requests already, the detective said. Other jurisdictions. Other questions. Cade leaned back. Any indication he's tied to more than what we already know? The detective hesitated. He talks like he wants you to think he's done more, he said. But he also talks like he enjoys watching people react. Mara's mouth tightened. So he treats confession like entertainment. Exactly, the detective said. He wants to control the room. Cade nodded. That fit. Control wasn't always about power in the obvious sense. Sometimes it was about something smaller and meaner. The pleasure of making other people uncomfortable, the thrill of watching professionals scramble. They spent the next hours doing the unglamorous work, cross-checking timelines, comparing notes, pulling background. Nothing about it looked like television. It looked like a printer that refused to cooperate, a phone that wouldn't stop ringing, and a desk that seemed to generate paper like it had a personal vendetta. At one point, Mara picked up a new form, read the title, and stared at it like it had insulted her family. Why? She asked the ceiling. Is there a 3-page document called Interagency Courtesy Notification? Cade didn't look up. Because we are courteous, he said, deadpan. Mara flipped to page 2. Page 2 is a summary of page 1. Cade took a sip of coffee. Courtesy, he repeated. In layers. In the afternoon, a call came in from a man who identified himself as White's roommate. He sounded nervous, but in a very specific way, like someone who had been living beside a storm and had learned to tiptoe around weather. Cade met him in an interview room that didn't have the sharp edges of interrogation. No pressure, no performance, just a chair, a table, and the quiet hum of the building. The roommate, Elliot, sat down and wrung his hands, glancing at the corners of the room as if White might be hiding there like a bad surprise. I didn't know, he said quickly. I swear I didn't know. Cade kept his voice gentle. We're not here to accuse you, he said. We're here to understand him. Elliot swallowed. He was weird, he said, then winced. Sorry, that sounds small. He was volatile. He would go from 0 to a lot, over nothing. Mara, standing near the door, raised her eyebrows. Over nothing? Elliot nodded. TV, he said. He'd get fixed on a show. Old sci-fi stuff. If I changed the channel, he'd act like I'd committed a personal betrayal. Like I'd stolen something from him. Mara tilted her head. So he treated the remote control like a sacred object. Elliot's eyes widened. Yes, he said, relieved someone finally put it into words that made sense. Exactly. Cade didn't joke. He didn't dismiss it. He'd seen how small triggers could expose big problems. Did he threaten you? Cade asked. Elliot hesitated, then nodded. He'd say things, he admitted, not always directly. More like he wanted me to be afraid. He wanted the room to belong to him. Cade made a note. Not because TV preferences mattered, but because the underlying need did. Control, dominance, the urge to turn ordinary life into a territory. When Elliot left, Mara exhaled slowly. Imagine being so fragile, she said, that a TV channel ruins your whole personality. Cade's eyes stayed on his notes. It's not the channel, he said. It's the entitlement. Mara nodded. Still, she said, I'm adding never share a remote with a stranger to my life rules. The hardest part came next, as it always did. The family. Victor Woods' mother arrived with a relative who held her elbow, steadying her the way you steady someone stepping onto ice. She was composed in that brittle, trembling way grief can create, like a person trying to keep themselves upright by sheer will. Cade met her in a small room away from the noise. Mara stayed nearby, quiet and watchful, because even sarcasm knows when to take off its shoes and lower its voice. Cade told Victor's mother what he could and what he couldn't. He explained that a suspect had been arrested in another city, that the suspect had admitted involvement in Victor's death, that the case now had a direction strong enough to hold in court. He did not dramatize. He did not say anything that would make her relive the worst moment in a vivid way. He stuck to the truth and the structure of it, because sometimes structure is the only thing you can offer someone whose world has collapsed. Victor's mother listened, eyes fixed on Cade's face as if she could pull certainty out of his expression. When he finished, she nodded once, and the nod carried a lifetime of questions that had no good home. So, she said softly, you didn't know my son. Cade held her gaze. No, he said. Not really. She stared down at her hands. Then why? She whispered. Cade felt the familiar ache, the anger that never really leaves. Sometimes there isn't a why that feels fair, he said carefully. Sometimes it's timing. Sometimes it's a person making a choice they never had the right to make. Her breath shook. Victor was just trying to get home, she said, like the words didn't belong in a world where he didn't make it. Yes, Cade said. That's what makes it so wrong. She nodded again, and tears slipped out quietly, not dramatic, not loud, just present. I keep thinking, she said, if he had done one thing different, if he'd left earlier, if he'd called someone else. Cade gently shook his head. People do normal things every day, he said. They accept a ride. They trust a face. They believe the world is mostly safe. Your son didn't do anything that caused this. Victor's mother looked at him, and for a moment Cade saw his sharpest kind of pain, the pain of a parent realizing there is no negotiation with reality. No bargain. No redo. When she left, Mara stood in the hallway with her arms crossed tight, like she was holding herself together. I hate this part, she said. Cade nodded. Me too. They went back to their desks because the system doesn't pause for grief. It just keeps moving, and if you don't move with it, the truth falls behind and people get hurt again. Over the next week, the case turned into a web of coordination. Pueblo needed statements. Colorado Springs needed transcripts. The prosecutor needed clean timelines. Someone from a different county called to ask if White had ever been there, and Cade had to answer with the one phrase detectives hate, we don't know yet. Mara spent an entire afternoon chasing down a single piece of paperwork that had been misfiled under W instead of V, which is how chaos often wins, one letter at a time. When she finally slammed the file onto Cade's desk, she pointed at it like she was presenting evidence in a personal trial. Here, she said, your system failed because someone doesn't know the alphabet. Cade opened the folder. The alphabet is complicated, he said solemnly. Mara blinked. No, it is not. Cade kept a straight face. Have you met Q? Q is suspicious. Mara stared at him, then laughed once, sharp and brief, because even the worst weeks, your brain sometimes demands one small absurd moment just to prove you're still alive. As the legal process advanced, White's demeanor didn't soften. In hearings, he appeared bored, as if everyone around him was taking this too seriously. Cade watched from the back once and felt that same cold irritation rise. It wasn't the irritation of being disrespected. It was the irritation of seeing how easily some people could step over human life and then act inconvenienced by the consequences. Afterward, Mara nudged Cade in the hallway. If I ever look that bored in public, she said, promise me you'll check my temperature. Cade murmured, if you ever look that bored in public, I'll assume you've been replaced. The weeks rolled. Paper became history. History became a file on a shelf. The case that had started with smoke and panic in a building full of frightened families eventually became a sentence written in formal language. Language that tried to hold the weight of what had happened without spilling it onto everyone else. One night, long after most of the precinct had emptied out, Cade sat alone and stared at a small sign he'd taped to the inside of his desk drawer. It was old, slightly crooked, and the print had faded from years of being opened and closed like a private truth. Mysteries make my head hurt. Mara appeared in the doorway holding 2 cups of coffee because she seemed physically incapable of arriving empty-handed. She set one down and looked at him. You're thinking, she said. Kay didn't deny it. Mara leaned against the frame. You know what I keep coming back to? She asked. That it wasn't some grand plan. It wasn't some big motive. It was just a wrong person crossing a right person's path. Cade nodded slowly. That's what makes it terrifying, he said. It means the world doesn't always warn you. Mara lifted her coffee cup slightly like a toast. So we warn people, she said. Not with fear, with awareness. Cade looked up at her. And with paperwork, he added. Mara sighed. Yes, she said. With paperwork. Because apparently justice is allergic to simplicity. Cade took a sip, then leaned back, eyes heavy with fatigue. Victor did nothing to deserve it, he said quietly. Mara's voice softened. I know. Cade stared at the sign again, then pushed the drawer shut. All we can do, he said, is keep showing up before the next person becomes a file. Mara nodded, then tilted her head toward the hallway. Speaking of showing up, she said dispatch just called. Another case. Different neighborhood. Same human problem. Cade stood, pulled on his coat, and felt the familiar engine inside him turn over again. Exhausted, stubborn, unwilling to stop. He walked toward the door, and Mara followed, and behind them the precinct lights hummed like they always did, indifferent to grief, indifferent to fatigue, indifferent to the fact that 2 detectives were about to step back into the city's messy reality with nothing but questions, patience, and the quiet determination to keep the worst moments from becoming anyone's permanent ending. Dispatch didn't even bother with a warm-up this time. The voice on the line sounded like it had been poured straight out of filing cabinet. Urgent, clipped, and already tired. Possible abduction, the dispatcher said. Adult female. Last seen near grocery lot. Witness reports a struggle. Vehicle left fast. Patrol is on scene. Mara Vance was already halfway down the hall before Jonah Cade finished hearing the address. Coat flaring behind her like she was in a movie that refused to provide a stunt double. Cade followed, grabbing his keys with the muscle memory of a man who had picked them up 1,000 times and never once thought, maybe today I should take up pottery instead. The drive was quiet in that concentrated way it always was when the call carried a certain weight. City lights slipped past like blinking eyes. Cade kept his hands steady on the wheel, his mind already building the first structure. Secure the scene, identify witnesses, preserve what can be preserved, strip away what people assume, and keep the story from turning into rumor before it even has a name. When they arrived, the parking lot was an ugly kind of normal. Shopping carts, faded lines, a couple of late-night workers smoking by the dumpster, the hum of fluorescent lights that made everything look slightly sick. Patrol units were parked at angles that said this wasn't routine. A young officer met them near a row of cars, face tight, notebook clutched like a life preserver. Lieutenant, the officer said, voice trying hard to be professional. Witness says she saw a woman get pulled into a vehicle. It happened fast. He glanced down, there's a dropped phone, and a scarf. Cade nodded once. Good job holding the scene, he said, because people needed that small reassurance when they were standing in the shadow of something frightening. He looked at the dropped phone, screen cracked, still glowing with an unanswered notification, and felt the familiar internal shift. A phone on the ground is an interruption. It's a sentence that ends too early. Mara crouched near the scarf, careful not to touch. That looks expensive, she murmured, which means either our victim has taste or the scarf has a better paycheck than we do. Cade scanned the area, noting the position of the items, the angle of tire marks that suggested someone had accelerated hard. He didn't narrate his thoughts out loud. He never liked performing. But he did clock the small detail that mattered. A faint smear on the edge of a nearby bumper, like someone had collided briefly while trying to move fast. A witness stood near the front of the store, hugging herself in the cold. She was in her 20s, wearing a grocery vest, eyes wide. Kate approached with the gentle posture he used when people were scared and blaming themselves. "I'm Jonah," he said. "You're safe. Tell me what you saw." The witness swallowed. "She was walking to her car," she said. "It was normal. Then a guy came out from between the trucks. He grabbed her. She tried to pull away. She dropped her phone. He yanked her toward a van. White van. No windows on the side. Mara's pen moved. Any markings? Company logo? Stickers?" The witness shook her head hard. "No, just plain, like it was trying to be invisible." Kate nodded. "Did you hear anything?" The witness hesitated. She said stop, and then she said a name. "I couldn't hear it. Like Cal, or Kel, something like that." Cade's eyes flicked to Mara for half a heartbeat. Names were currency in investigations, but they were also the easiest thing for a panicked mind to mishear. Still, he filed it away. A name that begins with a sound can be a thread. Threads matter. Another witness, a middle-aged man with a baseball cap and the posture of someone who believed he had seen everything, walked up and inserted himself into the conversation as if he'd purchased a ticket. "I saw it too," he declared. "Guy looked like trouble. You can just tell." Mara looked at him. "Sir," she said with polite firmness, "if you can just tell, we're going to need you to teach a class because it would save the city a lot of paperwork." The man blinked, offended by the concept of humor in an emergency. "I'm serious." "So are we," Mara replied, and somehow managed to make it both true and a warning. Cade guided the man gently into specifics: height, build, clothing, direction of travel. The man offered a lot of opinions and very few facts, which was common. Opinions are abundant. Facts are shy. They pulled security footage from the store, and Cade watched the grainy video on a manager's monitor while the manager hovered like someone who wanted credit for owning a building with cameras. On screen, a woman crossed the lot with a bag in one hand and her phone in the other. A white van appeared in a gap. A figure moved quickly. The woman resisted. The van door opened, closed, and then the vehicle rolled out with the calm smoothness of something that had rehearsed being calm. Mara's jaw tightened. "That van's too clean," she muttered. "No logo, no windows, no personality. It's the beige sweater of crime." Cade didn't react to the joke, but he agreed with the point. "We put out a bolo," he said. "White cargo van, no side windows, possible front bumper scuff on passenger corner. Get traffic cams. Get plate readers. Pull anything from his corridor." A patrol sergeant nodded and moved, because when a lieutenant speaks in that tone, you don't debate, you execute. As the first hour unfolded, the case began to show the shape Cade hated. A fast event, a moving suspect, a city full of roads. The only advantage was the clock. The sooner you move, the more mistakes the suspect makes, and the more the city itself becomes your witness. They identified the victim within an hour. Alina Mercer, 34, office job, no known criminal history. A sister who lived across town and answered her phone on the second ring with a voice that was already panicked, as if she'd been waiting for the universe to deliver bad news. "She wouldn't just disappear," the sister said. She's cautious. She texts me when she leaves work. She texts me when she gets home. She texts me when she's thinking about texting me." Mara, listening on speaker, murmured, "That's actually kind of adorable." Cade kept it on track. "Did Alina mention anyone bothering her?" he asked. "Any recent threats, arguments, strange calls?" The sister's breathing hitched. "There was a guy," she said, "from her past. Not dangerous, I thought. Just persistent. He kept showing up. She said he wanted closure." Cade felt a small internal alarm ring. "Do you know his name?" "Grant," the sister said. "Grant Ellison." Mara wrote it down, so hard the pen nearly snapped. "Grant Closure Ellison," she muttered. "People who want closure always want on their terms." Cade ignored the nickname, but not the instinct beneath it. Closure can be a harmless desire. It can also be a story someone tells themselves when what they really want is control. They ran the name. Grant Ellison had a record of minor disturbances. Nothing dramatic, but enough to sketch a personality. Restraining order filed years ago by someone else, resolved without conviction. Multiple calls to patrol for unwanted contact. No major offenses. The kind of person who lives in the gray zone where everyone keeps telling themselves it's not serious until it becomes serious. Mara stared at the screen. I hate the gray zone, she said. The gray zone is where trouble has snacks and makes itself comfortable. Kate nodded once. Find his address, he said. Find his vehicle registrations. Find his work. And find any friend who owns a white cargo van. They moved on 2 tracks, digital and physical. Digital mint plate readers, traffic cams, cell tower pings, and the kind of coordination that requires 3 departments, 2 databases, and 1 person who still remembers the password. Physical mint detectives in uniforms moving through real space, knocking on doors, asking questions, irritating people who wanted to stay unbothered. They hit Grant's apartment first. Nobody answered. The building manager, a woman with the expression of someone who lived for rules, insisted she couldn't let them in without paperwork. Mara held up her badge. The manager held up her laminated policy sheet like it was a shield. I need a warrant. Mara leaned in. Ma'am, she said warmly, I respect your dedication to paperwork. Truly, if loving forms were a sport, you'd be an Olympic athlete. But we have a missing person. This is not the moment to win Employee of the Month. The manager's nostrils flared. I'm not being emotional, she said stiffly. I'm being professional. Kate stepped in, voice calm. We'll get the warrant, he said. In the meantime, tell us if he has a white cargo van. The manager blinked. He has a bicycle, she said, as if that proved innocence. Mara sighed. Of course he does. They got the warrant fast. A judge on duty was cooperative when Cade used the voice that sounded like a man who would not be delayed by bureaucracies need to feel important. The warrant arrived. The door came open. Inside, the apartment smelled like stale energy drinks and old carpet. Nothing obvious screamed crime, but the place carried that faint tension of a person who lives alone and thinks too much. On the kitchen counter sat a notebook open to a page full of lists, dates, locations. Little notes that looked like someone tracking a routine. Not a diary. More like surveillance dressed up as organization. Mara read one line and made a face. He wrote grocery, Tuesday nights, parking row C. She looked at Cade. That's not closure. That's planning. Cade didn't touch the notebook until it was photographed. He stared at it, feeling the unpleasant clarity settle. He anticipated her, he said quietly. In the bedroom closet, they found a duffel bag packed with tape, gloves, and other items that were concerning without needing to be described in a way that turned them into a blueprint. Kate felt anger rise, not hot but clean. It was the anger of recognizing intent. Mara's voice dropped. Okay, she said. Now I'm officially done being patient with Grant Ellison. They moved faster. Grant wasn't home. His phone was off, but his bank card had been used 20 minutes earlier at a gas station off the highway. The clerk at the station remembered him because he'd bought a snack, asked for directions, and looked sweaty in cold weather. He was in a hurry, the clerk said. He kept checking the parking lot. Cade asked the most important question. Did you see a van? The clerk nodded. White van, he said. No windows. Parked behind the building. Mara shut her eyes for a second. Beige sweater, she muttered. I hate being right. They got a partial plate from a traffic camera near the station. Not perfect, but enough. It matched a rental. The rental agency confirmed the vehicle had been checked out 2 days earlier by Grant Ellison. Cade felt the case tighten into a single direction. We find that van, he said. They coordinated with State Patrol, put units on likely routes, checked rest stops, checked industrial lots, checked anywhere someone might stop briefly without attention. Cade knew the psychology. People who plan something like this often imagine they're invisible. But invisibility is fragile. One wrong turn, one nervous glance, one poor decision, those cracks spread. Mara rode with him, staring at the map on her tablet like it was personally responsible for the suspect's location. He's going to do something foolish, she said. Cade kept his eyes on the road. They always do, he replied. The question is whether we get there first. They found a van parked behind a self-storage facility on the edge of town, tucked between units like it wanted to be forgotten. A uniformed officer spotted it first and held the perimeter. Kate arrived and felt the world narrow, the way it always does when you're close to the center of the storm. Mara leaned in, voice low. "Remember," she said, "we do this clean. No hero stuff." Kate nodded. "I don't do hero stuff," he said. Mara looked at him. "You literally went to a true crime trivia night last week." Kate paused. That was cultural research. Mara's expression said she would revisit this insult later, in writing. They approached with a tactical team, voices clear, commands firm. Grant Ellison emerged from a storage unit doorway, with his hands visible, posture stiff. His face carried the expression of a man trying to decide whether his story could still work. Kate spoke calmly, holding the moment steady. "Grant," he said, "where's Alina Mercer?" Grant's jaw tightened. "She's fine," he said quickly. She's with me." Mara's voice sharpened. "That's the problem, Grant." Grant blinked as if no one had ever framed it that way before. Kate kept it controlled. "Tell us where she is," he said. "Now." Grant hesitated. His eyes flicked toward the storage unit. A mistake. A huge one. Directional cues are the closest thing to truth a liar gives you. Within minutes, officers opened the unit carefully. Inside, Alina was found alive, shaken, frightened, but breathing, responding, and immediately surrounded by medical care. She clutched a blanket like it was a shield and kept looking at faces as if she couldn't trust any of them to be real yet. Cade felt the rarest sensation in homicide work, relief that didn't come with a funeral behind it. Mara exhaled so hard it was practically a weather event. "Okay," she said softly. "I like this ending better." Cade nodded, watching paramedics guide Alina out gently. "Me too," he said. Grant was taken into custody without spectacle. He tried to talk as they led him away, tried to explain himself in a rush of words that sounded like excuses dressed as feelings. Cade didn't engage. In these moments, engagement can become fuel. The process would handle him. The evidence would handle him. The court would handle him. Cade's job was to make sure Alina made it to the next day. Later, back at the precinct, Mara sat on the edge of Cade's desk, looking both exhausted and strangely satisfied. "We found her alive," she said, as if saying it again would make it more real. Cade leaned back. "We did," he replied. Mara nodded slowly. "I'm going to celebrate," she said. Cade lifted an eyebrow. "Ow," Mara pointed toward the break room. "I'm going to eat the last vending machine donut," she declared. "And I'm going to do it without guilt." Cade stared at her. "That donut has been in there since the last administration." Mara shrugged. "Today," she said, "I fear nothing." Cade almost smiled. "Almost. Just make sure you write a report first," he said, because if he didn't say it, the universe might punish him for optimism. Mara hopped down. "Lieutenant," she said, "you're incapable of joy without documentation." Cade didn't deny it. When the building finally quieted, Cade sat alone for a moment and stared at the city through the window. Somewhere out there, Alina Mercer was going to call her sister. Somewhere out there, a family was going to cry for a reason that wasn't grief. Somewhere out there, a woman was going to sleep and wake up and text someone she loved just because she could. Cade knew tomorrow would bring another case, another fear, another file that wanted to become permanent. But tonight, just tonight, he let himself accept the simplest truth a detective doesn't often get to hold. Sometimes you arrive in time. Mara's voice drifted down the hall. "Cade." He stood. "What?" Mara appeared at the doorway, holding a donut in one hand and a report form in the other. "I filled out the report," she announced, mouth full. "I'm officially documenting my joy." Cade stared at her for a beat, then finally let a small, tired smile slip through. "Good," he said. "Make 2 copies." Mara groaned theatrically and disappeared back into the hallway, and the precinct lights hummed on, indifferent but steady, as Jonah Cade returned to his desk, still tired, still stubborn, still human, still ready for whatever story the city decided to hand him next.